We have less capital in the market. It's literally 1/3 of what it used to be. But deals from an early stage, still very strong. It's not enough to say we have a working prototype for half the investors out there. So you need to have significant traction. Once you make the entrepreneur or the founder the product, I think we go down a slippery slope.
Okay, welcome back. Today we have Ed Kang, who is a 7-time funded founder with 2 exits. He has advised over 600 startups, raised over $100 million, and is currently the chief strategy officer at startups.com. So to say he has a few things to say on this subject would be an understatement. Welcome, Ed. So good to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Jayla, for having me.
Awesome. This is fun. As I just mentioned, we chatted for a quick second. I came across your YouTube channel maybe like 6 months ago, and you put out so much great content. I think you do an amazing job. And there's so much I want to talk about. But one thing I would love to touch on really quickly, you mentioned that you think all founders need to be creators these days. And I am with you on that, as much as I resisted it for a very long time. So expand on that and tell us why you think that is so important.
It's a trend that I've been watching and I started experimenting with. So we're both on YouTube and you're creating podcasts. And I just started to see signs of it. And then I think what really nailed it home for me were investors, general partners of recognizable funds that have made good bets. So you want to listen to them. And they were talking about the main thing in the sense that if you can actually build a channel, then your customer acquisition cost goes down to 0. And what's the best way to do that? Become a creator. And so we saw the creator economy boom. And then we started seeing, like on YouTube, these Mr. Beast, these creators would then become founders. And I thought, okay, how do these worlds collide? And as I began looking at the signals and started reading the tea leaves and had more conversations, and I've seen founders start off as creators and raise significant amounts of capital and create these amazing startups because they're so close with their audience. And what a better way to be a creator, have a parasocial relationship with your audience, get customer discovery validation. And you see these other brands. You see Elon Musk is probably the biggest example. His companies have a certain amount of followers, but he himself has a massive amount of followers. And he's one of the craziest creators. No matter what you think about him, you can have your opinions all day long, but he knows how to get attention as a creator. He is a creator, but he's a founder. And so I'm watching this transition happen. And the more customers I'm watching prefer to get to know the artist, the author, we're seeing the disruption in all the spaces. People are saying, to be an author now, do you need a social media presence? Do you need to be out there in the public? And you can't deny, publishers are saying, if you have a better social media presence, we're more apt to publish your book. And so I'm watching it happen across the board. So I said, let me try it. And I got the results. And so I have this now thesis that this is going to be the future. And it's just going to increase.
That's amazing. Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's so much noise out there, and we kind of have to have our brand and who we are out front and center. And that's kind of how you do that nowadays, because especially investors are seeing a lot of people. So how do you stand out? And if you show the confidence in having that, being able to put yourself out there, I think that goes a long way. I think the other thing too, like when I started my wine company, Instagram and Facebook were starting, and I just had a resistance to showing my whole life on there. But I've always felt like I had a lot to say or wanted to share. And there's so many channels now to be able to find what fits your personality as a creator, So I don't know, for you, would you say that any one channel is more important than another from the investor standpoint? Is it like YouTube's the one, or is it podcasting or social? Like, what do you think? Any insight there?
I think it depends on you as the individual. I have never been able to get any headway on Instagram. I'm just not that type of creator. And I started doing it on Facebook. I got a certain type of following on Facebook, and I said, maybe not my thing. So you see these tribes happen, and you start to get feedback from your market. And it just so happened that YouTube fits me. It's just, I can appreciate the algorithm. I have a sense. I'm a big fan of YouTube, so I'm staying right there on the front lines. And other people, it's going to be Snapchat. Others, TikTok. I was in China, so I lived in China, got some investment from there and had to move there, and then became a general partner for a fund over there. And I was on their version of TikTok. And I think I got to something like 600,000 followers. And it was a very particular niche because I was Asian, Korean, in China. I spoke native English, so I could do something in particular that worked for their version of TikTok there, but it wouldn't have worked over here. So you have to understand the context in which you're in and experiment. And I think everybody can find that one thing. Some people are amazing at LinkedIn, other people not. You just got to find your jam, stay with it, get in your lane, and then really hammer that lane. Get all the bowling balls going down that one lane at first, and then maybe you can diversify. That's my advice.
Love it. Great advice. That's very cool. Okay, on the startup seed money front, because you're looking at, thousands of businesses and what investors are investing in, what are you seeing as the landscape right now? Like what's happening? What's the trend, in terms of people getting funding?
Right now, we're at the end. So we're in Q4 2024. So we have some lagging indicators, but I get the benefit of sending out literally hundreds of emails on behalf of founders every single day. So that's what part of our operation does. And so I'm watching the responses in real time. And right from general partners telling me we have less capital in the market, it's literally 1/3 of what it used to be. I'm watching the deals. It's tough sledding out there. We're in an election year. The cycle always happens. We're at this kind of nuclear winter of this bear market cycle. So it is tough sledding out there. But deals from an early stage, still very strong, because you have to understand the mentality and what works for the investment cycles is by the time the market is frothy again, while these companies need time to mature. So I'm still watching checks at an early stage, very healthy checks being written. Valuations are a lot more normal, and it's not 2021. So founders are getting a wake-up call and saying, what do you mean, Ed? Before, it was so easy to raise money. You have to understand that was the market condition. So everyone still has that bit of hangover, but I think the reality bat has kind of really hit everybody over the head. So founders are getting very realistic. You're watching the startups come out of Y Combinator and the amount of money they're raising and their valuation. So I think that we've hit bottom. We're bouncing off bottom right now. Some of the indicators are good. We're still waiting for that IPO to get everybody excited. We're still waiting for AI to really come through in the promises. We need an AI company to go public. There are so many things that need to happen, but we're just at the beginning. So I'm thinking now's the time. 2025, I think we're going to start seeing a little bit of a thaw happen, but I definitely can concur. It is super tough right now, and founders are frustrated. Investors are frustrated. But if you just look at, if I took my money and I put it into a startup last year or in the past couple of years, I would have lost my money because it's not a good market. Trends have changed. So much has changed. But if I put it in the stock market in public companies, let's say I invested in NVIDIA, overall, I'd be averaging 40% of my money. So you can't blame investors, especially at early stage, that they're not putting money in startups right now. And I think that's something founders have to understand. It's just macro trends. And that's what I'm seeing. But it is getting better. So I'm pretty optimistic.
That's good insight. For the checks that you are seeing, move over to the founder's hands, what kinds of things are investors looking for to be able to take that risk and go for it?
You've got two dimensions, and typically I'm watching founders fall in one or the other. It's either an amazing founder team, and we are talking accolades, credentials, previous VC experience, an exit. You won a Nobel Prize. You're going to bet on that founder. Imagine just if Jeff Bezos came to me tomorrow and said, I'm going to start a startup. I have no idea what it is, but I'm going to start a startup. I'd be like, take my money, right? Just here you go. And so we're watching that happen. On the other side, we're watching founders with significant traction. I saw an interesting stat the other day is that if you look at investors and just take a general clump, 50% of early stage pre-seed investors need to see revenue now. That was not the case before. And you're looking at founders, it's not enough to say we have a working prototype for half the investors out there. So you need to have significant traction. You either need to have a big market, you have to be proving founder market fit ahead of time and say, I've got all this social proof. I know one founder raised $1 million and he didn't even build anything yet. He just had commitments and he had a sheet with serious logos on it and pre-commitments. So that was social proof, traction. We believe in you now. We're going to do that. We want to get in early, or you have to have been making revenue. And we're watching pre-seed rounds where some investors say, I need to see you reach $1 million before I'll invest in you pre-seed. And that's completely changed. And it's a big shock to the system. Now, mind you, there's still 50% of investors that say, I don't necessarily need to see revenue, but what is the go-to-market strategy? They're really drilling down and clamping down on business models, go-to-market strategy, competitive differentiators. Do you understand your competition? Investors are getting a lot wiser because they're tired of these big stories that came out and someone said, I think I can build something, and they didn't, or these promises come true. And that's what I'm seeing right now. Checks are still getting written, but falls into one or two categories, either an amazing founder team or you've got significant traction that sets you apart.
Got it. Okay. Well, one of them, you can't just run out and get a Nobel Prize, but traction you can get. And I think that actually goes back to that point about becoming a creator, because that can help you get the traction. It was funny. I just did an episode on getting into retail, for consumer products. And retailers want to see traction too, so everybody wants to see traction. So logos, what are those entrepreneurs showing those end customers to get those early commitments?
I think it falls in a couple categories. One is how intimate, how close are you with your customers? Do you have founder market fit? I think that's something that many founders don't realize, they overestimate or they don't even consider. You can have founder problem fit, where I'm a great founder and I know how to solve this problem. You can have problem solution fit. You can actually build something, but founder market fit is the distribution. And you see this conversation happen with second-time founders all the time. I'm exactly the same way. In the beginning, I was all about product. Now, I'm all about distribution. In fact, I'd rather lock down distribution before I even get to a product, because products are getting so much easier. Distribution, just like you said at the top of the show, it's so noisy out there. Investors need to see that. So if investors believe that you've got founder market fit and you can figure out distribution and you've got the metrics to show for that, then great. The other thing that I think happens is they're looking for anything that will de-risk the investment and provide them, or you are showcasing that you have a unique insight into the market. So if you can go out and say, but I know something that everybody else doesn't know. These people may have millions of followers out there or have this distribution outlet, but maybe I've got a core audience that is so contrarian that's going to be massive. And I'm investing in one space right now. We're doing some ventures, and we have hit a subset of this kind of entertainment economy. And we're predicting that it's going to be massive, and we're collecting metrics on it. That's an insight I'll be able to tell investors. They'll look at me and say, oh, we didn't know that. And I'll say, here's my data. And I'm telling you, this is going to be a big thing if we get in early on it, and you want to get in early on it. So I think it falls in those two categories right now.
Got it. Interesting. And in terms of when you're talking investors, are you talking more just kind of institutional or private angels?
It depends. I've seen a unique shift. So if you look at institutional, if you look at venture capital, really up until 2021, 2022, it was just an assembly line factory model. And I'll tell you this story. I meet people in the startup industry, the ecosystem all the time. And I had this young man show up and I asked him, what do you do? And he said, I'm a general partner. I'm a managing partner of a fund. And I looked at him, I said, are you even legal enough to get into a bar? Really? Like, because that's how young he looked. But he's carrying around, he's flashing around, I run a fund. And that seems so odd to me. But I realized that if you looked at all the people in, quote, VC institutional capital back for the past few years, like the faces were getting younger and younger, and it was becoming trendier and like, because the money was all over the place. Like, you've got cheap money flying around. So everybody wants to hang their shingle and get into VC. And finishing a fund is so difficult now. We literally celebrate when someone actually fills out their fund. So I think that institutional capital went from, in the past few years, to kind of this asset management where we're just going to sign you and then we're going to make you grow really fast, and then we're going to sell you up into the A round, the seed A, B round, and look at how portfolio is growing. And that's how you made money from management fees versus actually investing in startups. Whereas some of the stalwarts, the OGs in the industry, were still investing in early stage. You saw the really smart institutional investors go earlier and earlier stage, like Y Combinator has sort of staked their claim really in that early stage. So I'm watching investors do that more. Institutional investors are acting more like angels, whereas angels wanted to act more like VCs. I think that we're getting back to, let's try and find that diamond in the rough. Let's try and find that founder that's working in that underserved, underrepresented, underestimated market. They're just going to come and surprise everybody because our money's going to go so much further in there as far as equity. I think that's going to become more of a thing right now. So when you say angel to VC, the lines are blurring for me. The only difference is that a VC will have limited partners. So they're beholden. They've got investors. So they have to work with the LPs. And the LPs are going to be saying, why aren't you putting my money in AI? And that's where you're going to have to act more like VC. But then there are some LPs going, you know what? I'm done with that. Go find me a really great deal over here in something that we wouldn't necessarily be thinking of, something contrarian. And I think that's where a lot of your audience and the founders that I talk to need to play as far as what type of investor they're talking to.
Let's say you are an early stage entrepreneur. You're in the process of getting traction, but you need to kind of self-fund, right? Until things pick up. Like, what are your recommendations on bootstrapping? Is it just staying really focused and kind of having a day job to keep things going till you prove it out and just refining that pitch deck? Or I don't know, just any thoughts around that, like for that that early stage person who isn't likely to get that funding right now when they need it?
It's so individual dependent. I don't know what you did. I know your background and your experience, Shark Tank and everything. Some people are just better at bootstrapping than others. Some people know how to subdivide their life, compartmentalize their life and go, do a job and then come home and they get excited to do that. And other people, they can't stand it. And it's so personality dependent, right? I'd say let's look at a spectrum. So on one side, you go get a job and you just work and you find a job that pays you enormous amount of money. Maybe you're working, like a lot of software engineers do this. You work and you literally only have to work 4 hours a day, but you have a full-time salary. You're that good. Okay, you're working remote, so no one's breathing down your neck. And that's the reason, back to office is just a big thing right now because everyone's freelancing. Like every software engineer, this is a dirty secret, they're all freelancing. So you've got that side. So work your job, make as much money as you can, then invest in your startup and bootstrap it. Then on the other side, you have go all in and just throw caution to the wind. And that's going to put the pressure on you. I had a fascinating conversation with someone who helps startups over in Toronto. I'm in Calgary. And he said, Ed, the startups in Toronto are way more resilient, battle tested. And I said, interesting. Tell me the reason. He said, because your dollar does not stretch as much. There's so much more pressure when you get $100,000 in funding over in Toronto versus $100,000 in Calgary. I said, okay, point taken. I can see we're a lot more relaxed over here in Calgary. And so you can just go all in those all in moments. So like when I moved to China, I was all in. I did not know how I was going to pay the mortgage, feed my family, unless I made the startup work. I get it. Take your runway, you're burned down to nothing, live on ramen noodles, just move into your parents' place, live on their couch, do whatever you have to do, work out of their garage and make a go of it. So there's your spectrum, right? Now, in the middle, this is what I personally prefer. I prefer getting a job that pays me to solve the problem in the industry that I'm targeting. That way, I get the comfort of a full-time salary, but I'm with my customers, I'm in the industry, and I'm learning. So I'm actually paid to do customer discovery, idea validation. That, to me, is the middle of the road. It's tough to do, but I find that I get the best of both worlds when I do that, and that would be my recommendation. Does it suit you? You're going to have to do a gut check, do some soul searching.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love that. Yeah, I did the quit, go all in, then realize this is going to take me way longer, need to work, did a 50 million things on the side. But if I hadn't quit that early, I don't know if I would have kept going, so I think there is both sides of it. And I think, so that leads a little bit into mindset, right? Around for entrepreneurs to keep going through the long haul. And what's your take? I think I love that you've written a book about this. And I think it's fascinating because you obviously feel strongly about mindset and, putting a focus on that. So what's your take on mindset for entrepreneurs and what aspects do they need to work on to be able to push through these crazy long hauls that sometimes it takes?
Yeah, great question. I appreciate that. Let me bounce it back to you and let's riff off something from your background. So you achieved a certain amount of success. It's great. What would you say is the number one characteristic that you had as far as your mindset that helped you get as successful? Because I've talked to other Shark Tank contestants and listen, it is an arduous process. Like that is like trying out for an NFL team and getting picked in the draft type thing. What would you say was the number one quality for you?
Gosh, I would say there's two. The first one I think is sheer determination. Like when I am determined to do something, it's like to my core, I'm determined, and I just believe I can do it. And then I think to back that up is, I remember hearing someone a long time ago saying to be an entrepreneur, you have to be deliriously optimistic.
Yeah.
And I think I do have that trait a little bit where I just find the best in everything, and sometimes to a fault even. But yeah, I would say those are the two things that for me personally.
Right. And so just by you answering the question, you've given everybody the secret. You have enough self-awareness to know what works for you. And that is a mistake that I think many founders, really everybody. For example, I know someone who takes your optimism angle to the nth degree and he says, I have to be pathologically optimistic. Optimistic to the point where someone is going to throw me in jail type thing, right? But he knew himself. And if we look at personal development, self-awareness is the very first thing you have to do. So if you know that is your quality and you can lean into that quality, other people are not, and different things will serve them differently. For example, some people work better under different types of pressure, social pressure, financial pressure. Other people are better at setting goals and going to the minutia and having a to-do list of 500 things. Other people, no, that's too much. Some people like a cadence. They like to work in a rhythm every day. I block out my time. Other people, it's like, no, when inspiration hits me, I'm just going to do it. In the meantime, I'm just going to relax and go look at the mountains and take in some sun, get into a flow state. You have to know yourself. And that's the first thing is so often we go out and say, what's the mindset? And we go look at someone, and maybe we'll look at some stats of all the different people and say, I need to go get that mindset. And someone will write a book, like, we have the book Mindset, which is all about, do you have a closed or fixed mindset? Do you have an open, learning mindset type thing? And the problem is that people go out and say, okay, then that's what I have to have, but it might not be the fit for you. So you have to start with the self-awareness and say, here are my hangups. So you might be dealing with, for example, procrastination. Some people poo-poo themselves, they get mad and they go under self-condemnation because of procrastination. But brain science and executive coaching, like we've learned that often procrastination is a sign of trauma. And if you haven't dealt with that, you're kind of giving yourself a hug because you're dealing with unresolved issues. Like if you watch Disney's movie, Disney Pixar Inside Out, I watch those and basically just think about what it's like to be a founder, what would be happening in a founder's brain. If you don't spend the time to do that self-exploration and get that self-awareness, you're never going to know what mindset you need, let alone how to develop it. So that's my first piece of advice for everyone.
That's amazing. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think too, that self-awareness when you're talking to investors and, all the relationships you're building, you need to have that self-awareness. So that totally makes sense. Yeah, your book was great. What was it? Cortex Circuit. Love it. Some good stuff in there.
I wrote that a long time ago. I appreciate you.
I love it. It's great though. I mean, I think it says a lot that you took the time to actually write about that. That's how important it is, for somebody who could be doing all these business activities, for you to do that, does show it's a big piece of the puzzle.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing now with startups.com. I'd love to just kind of hear more about your background. It sounds like you've had a lot of great experiences.
For sure. We're looking at the market right now and we're trying to stay ahead and say, what is the next thing to, for me, make startup education, startup advice, and the cliche term is democratize it, but for me, it's make it a utility. If you look at the haves and the have-nots, and there's always these complaints, I like to say we want to service the 99% that aren't going to go to Y Combinator, Sequoia, because a lot of those startups will turn into really great small businesses. I think everybody, just like writing a book, I think everybody should do a startup at one point in their lives and learn from themselves. And I think it's a great crucible to develop yourself, go out and try, like even learning how to do customer discovery, idea validation, founder-led sales, trying to lead a team, bootstrapping. It's so healthy for you to learn the qualities that you gain from doing that. So I like to say we're not about getting startups funded. We're not necessarily about getting startups successful to unicorn. That would be nice. There are two things that I like to do is I like to, A, help founders become better founders, even if it means they get punched in the face over and over again out in the marketplace and they fall down. Because for me, that's the sign of true resilience is how many times can you get back up after you've been knocked down? How often can you survive fatal, crushing defeats? That's just going to make you a better person. And there's no other industry that forces you to fail more and try and over again and get back up than startups. If you're trying to do something innovative and trying to disrupt an industry or you're trying to change behaviors. The second thing that I'm going for, and I think that's been one of the secrets of the reason I get the audience that I do, is we want to treat founders with dignity. A lot of times I think what happens is investors don't treat founders necessarily with the dignity that there's agency, sovereignty. And so that's the reason I'll give just as much attention to someone that in the back of my mind, I'm going to say, you are never going to succeed in Silicon Valley. You're never going to succeed. I would never put you in front of one of my investors. I would never do that, short of a miracle. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve to be treated with respect and dignity and given the equal opportunity to develop the tools to at least get partially there so you can be a better citizen, you can be a better employee. Maybe you come to realize startups aren't for me. Maybe I should go back to school. I know a lot of founders that do that. They kind of fail and then they go back to school and they find their jam. Or maybe I'm just a better employee, or maybe I'll join a startup and help another startup become successful. So it's all about, let's provide access to everyone. Let's give them the dignity and help them go on their way and give everybody a chance. And a lot of times I just deliver hope. That's what I'm there for, but also being very realistic. I'm not about the organizations that go out there and say, you can be a founder, everyone can be a founder, everyone will be a startup founder, raise money, just go out there. I think that once you make the entrepreneur or the founder the product, I think we go down a slippery slope. I think that the company and the product and helping people and making things that work and people love to use needs to be the product that you're helping them with, and helping the founder becomes a byproduct of that whole process, where I have founders come to me and they still hang out with me even though they've quit their startups, because they're just better people and we're friends now and they're killing it. They're crushing it in the world, making a contribution. And I think that we at startups.com, we want to provide that pathway for everyone. It's tough. It's been very hard. We're struggling in the market just like everybody else is, but it's worthwhile enough that I want to dedicate my life to it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's funny. When I was raising money for the first time and like listening to so much of the content out there, it was all VC based. It felt very judgy in that if you don't fit this certain profile, you're not the right entrepreneur or something. I don't know. I just felt that, which is kind of one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast also. It's just like, if you are going to go out and try it, give it your best shot, set yourself up to give it the best shot, and don't feel bad, like try again. Like you said, it's like, you're going to learn so much. It's crazy. And you just keep trying or figure out where your path is. And all of that is great experience. It's all life experience and it's all good stuff. So I am totally with you there. And I always say I would rather have tried than regret not trying, And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs too, I think, who have really great product ideas, but they don't really want to run a company. What do you say to those people? Because I've come across a few. They have an amazing patent where I'm familiar with the industry and I'm like, wow, that's actually seems like a good idea, but they're just really not in the mental space or, physically have the time. And should they just go license it or, sell the patent? I don't know. Any thoughts around that? Like if they're not really feeling, tuned in to growing a big startup kind of thing.
Yeah, I deal with this all the time. And here's the reality is that on one side, I've had founders go through these horror stories where they've sold a certain amount of their company to private equity, a group of investors, and then they go on vacation and they come back and they've been removed as the CEO because now you have to get to the next level. And if I'm really thinking from an investor standpoint, I understand the reason that occurs, because I've been in situations where you've got shareholders, you're a public company, the founder is just not going to get you there. The reality is that I would say 90% of founders don't have the wherewithal, nor should they, in terms of running a company to get to scale. I think you just look at Google, the two founders, Sergey and Brin, brought in Schmidt, and then the company took off, right? Even bringing in certain executives. So I think that it's okay to say, I don't want to run a company, but then let's go all the way back to those founders that say, I don't want to run a company, I just want a license. Now, there are alternatives out there. The problem is, I think the environment can get really predatory a lot of times, and also ownership. And when you're at such early stage, beggars can't be choosers. The power dynamic is not on your side. So if you've got an idea and it's not tested, it's not proven, not battle tested out in the marketplace, and you go license it, why would they pay attention to you? That's the whole thing. And if they do, let's just say they see something, they are going to do a predatory deal. You're going to get like a very small sliver of potentially large pie. Therefore, founders like that have to understand how many founders entrepreneurs and, dare I say, wantrepreneurs have an idea. I'm pitched all the time. I got this idea. Ed, you're in startups. You have access to capital. I got this idea. Nonstop. Everywhere that you go, people are pitching me ideas. It's the same way if you're a movie producer. Someone's got a script. Someone's got a story synopsis. Therefore, you have to move just a little bit further along, and you have to prove it. It's okay to say, I don't want to run the company, but go out and prove your idea, learn founder-led sales, get out there and at least start getting some traction. You don't have to get the big 800-pound gorilla company, but sell into the small businesses and show that you can get the data, the metrics, to then take it to an incubator, a studio, somewhere that's going to license it. Because on the other side, if you don't do that, then you're not going to know where you stand. And those incubators and those licensing companies, they'll do some predatory deals. And that's what really scares me. I see a lot of founders, they're held hostage. Their ideas are held hostage. Therefore, spend a bit of time and validate your viability and then start exploring, should I license it out or hire someone or whatever alternative is out there.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, no, I could totally see that. I know it is. The power dynamic is definitely not in your favor. You don't have a lot of options. And it's tough. That's a tough place to be when you've put, your savings in, you've borrowed family's money and you're at a make it or break it spot. So how do you guys, let's say somebody's at that point and they need, to surround themselves by some people to either motivate them to keep going or give them that extra nudge. How do you guys work with founders at startups.com?
First and foremost, we want to make sure that you get access to the people who will give you relevant information that's timely, customized to you. So we try and interconnect founders as much as possible, because I tell founders all the time, if you're on step 2, you can help lead someone in step 1. That's all we got to do. So I'm going to help you in step 2, but you help the person in step 1. That's going to be a righteous value exchange is what I call it. Because if every founder needs to come to me, then it's just everything's going to fall apart. So my claim to fame, I tell founders all the time, is the biggest contribution that I've made is I have twisted the rubber arms of founders who are a lot smarter than me to help you out. That's going to be my claim to fame. So I work with a lot of systems and I try to figure out network effects in our community versus everybody come to me. I'm the advisor. I had a mentor and he was an instructor, professor of mine, tell me, Ed, it's all about being the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. So I really took that to heart. So we try and surround the founders with right there. You're in CPG. We are leading a workshop and we have a CPG founder who's going to talk specifically about how to launch a product and how to get it funded. So that's what we do. So we try and create that and connect all that together. Then the next thing we try to do is we try and get the founder into a rhythm. And this is very difficult. And this is where I would say it does help to live in Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley, pick your poison, where you are, because you're surrounded. You can't go out for a coffee and be surrounded by people grinding and hustling. And the network effects are definitely there just by proximity. So you're kind of like a vampire, like you're just sucking, you're just osmosis, all that energy is coming into you. So if you have a founder in, let's say, Indiana, they don't have access to that. So we need to get the founder into some type of routine. And I would say this is where most founders won't make it. They won't make the adjustments to get in a routine to be surrounded by people, because I interviewed down at Y Combinator. And one of the biggest things that I noticed, I was just in the waiting room and they got this orange room with all these cafeteria tables or these long tables, and everyone's just hacking away. And some people are running around, were introducing themselves. And I was surrounded by these kids. And like, I was married and had kids myself. I was old enough to be like their dads in many of these cases. And they were telling me their ideas they were working on, and it just inspired me. Like, you put a group of really smart founders in the room together, we just feed off of each other and everything gets going. But you have to be willing to show up in the room together. Therefore, if I can get the founder participating in regular community life virtually, because we're not going to fly them to San Francisco, like we're not one of those, then I know I have a better chance of continually investing in them and dropping those seeds in that eventually are going to spark and eventually going to sprout and turn into something. And that's when, unfortunately, what happens is when a founder makes it, they don't have time for us anymore. Like they're off, and I just say, you made it. Have fun. Remember us. Come back. Yeah, exactly. Like come back as an angel investor or do an AMA or different things. And a lot of them do, to their credit.
That's cool.
They give back. But once they've made it, then yeah, the structure doesn't work for them. So we try and create kind of like this incubator community where everything's going to rise to the top, and you just naturally, a rising tide is going to raise all ships. That's what we try and do.
That is so cool. Virtual.
Yes, virtually.
Awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, I had a woman on last week from Nebraska, and she was talking about all the startup, stuff they're doing there. But like you said, there's a lot of people starting companies in a lot of places that don't have many resources around them, which can be really tough. Yeah.
And if I can make a comment on that, and I appreciate all the local programs that are happening, and we need to do that. But I don't think we've done a very good job in interconnecting on a micro to macro level. So if we zoom in to someone in Nebraska, like the Chamber of Commerce in whatever city that you're in, and then zoom out to, let's say, the show, Sequoia, Y Combinator, A16Z. I don't think there's enough interconnectivity that happens. I see people getting insulated because I tend to find that if you just stay in your local ecosystem. So I'm in Calgary, and I love Calgary. I never want to raise a family anywhere else. I love Calgary. I love Canada. I think it's great. I've lived in other cities, and I love those other cities as well. But I find that the local advice of the government-funded programs doesn't necessarily line up or is conducive to going to the big show. It's great because the incentives aren't aligned. Like a lot of times, these local programs want you to succeed locally versus, hey, we're going to kick you out of the nest and see you later type thing. So I think that founders need to be able to access multiple levels. So that's the benefit of us, is that we've got people in Silicon Valley, and we've got investors all around the world, participating in community, plus founders all around the world. And they've done deals with major VCs. They've done deals. They've taken companies public, and we have that layer. But then we've got the mom and pop shops, people that go to their local chamber of commerce, or they go to their local meetups and they network there. And that's good for them right at the moment. But then now we can grow in. So I think that we need to get better as a startup ecosystem in going local and national, macro, micro for these founders.
That makes sense. Yeah. Because the incentive or the motivation of the local programs is, to build up their economy and stuff like that. So that makes sense. Very cool. So if somebody is interested in working with you guys, where do they go? What do they do?
Sure. We have so many free resources on startups.com. We are trying to make it as accessible as possible. So all you have to do is go to startups.com. We're also on YouTube, and we help founders all the time. Just head over there, and we have a certain amount of resources that you can start to use. And I like to say, use what you have. Don't pay for it. Get the value from it. I'd rather give you so much value up front that later on you feel guilty and you want to write me a check. So let's just give you the free stuff that's better than what you pay for somewhere else. Use it, get your legs under you, maybe raise a few bucks or get your first customer, or be able to get in relationship with us via our media, and then say, now I'm ready to make that commitment. Because if you're a founder, early stage, let's say you're bootstrapping, I would be telling you to use your money wisely, right? What is the 10x return on your investment? So until you can see a 10x return on every single dollar that you'd spend with us, don't even try. Explore right at startups.com. And then when you're ready, everybody comes in, gets an orientation, meets with me first. We create your plan, and then I send you off into the community, and we start following along and work with you in terms of what you need to accomplish next.
I love that. I so appreciate that. There's so many these days of $30,000, $50,000 masterminds for people just starting. And it's like, there's so many free resources, and, I don't know, be wise.
Absolutely.
Absorb all the free stuff first. And so your YouTube channel is Ed Kang, right?
Yes. Ed Kang 99.
Ed Kang 99. Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes. Anything else you want to share? This is amazing.
Well, I just want to say thank you. When I came across and got this invitation to be on the podcast, you can imagine I get invitations all over the place, but this one in particular, in just saying, hey, outside of Silicon Valley, if you don't fit the mold, I think that's so important. As I keep saying, underserved, underrepresented, and underestimated founders. So I just want to say appreciation for what you're doing, watching all your other episodes. Keep doing it, and hopefully we collaborate more in the future.
Yeah, definitely. That would be fun. Yeah, no, I think I don't know. It's a tough journey. So I'm in the same boat of any way I can help people out. And it's just fun. I love it's just such good energy in the startup space. And, it's what our country runs on for the most part. And I think the future of our kids, I have a 7-year-old and I'm just like, yeah, that entrepreneurial spirit in some way, shape, or form, I think developing that in the younger generation is so important. So
I'll tell you, I am my son's angel investor. I have funded 3 startups for my son before he was 16 years old. I think the last one he did was at 16 years old. And I sat him down and I said, here's your investment. Here's what I'm looking at. Sat with this co-founder. I said, this is how we use slicing pie. I said, this is how we're going to divvy up equity, future vesting schedules. And his latest venture is in the creator economy, and he found what he was looking for, and he's off to the races, doesn't need me anymore. So we're living it in our family as well. So good luck to you, and I wish you the best with your kids.
So cool. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Ed. So nice to meet you. Appreciate your time. I know you are a busy guy, but I really appreciate having you on, and we'll hopefully stay in touch.
Thank you, Jayla.
Thank you. Bye-bye.